Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to Insurance for the New Possible, a Chubb conversation. We are joined today by Ron Tam, Co-Chief Financial Officer and Head of International at Huize, and the CEO of Pony InsurTech, and Shruti Sharma, Global Partnerships Manager at Chubb. The insurance industry in Asia is undergoing a continuous transformation. Emerging technologies are reshaping how insurers underwrite policies, process claims, and engage with customers. At the same time, digital platforms are emerging as new channels of distribution, bringing insurance to customers through social influencers, platform businesses, and embedded ecosystems. These innovations are opening new opportunities for growth while invoking thoughts about trust, accessibility, and alignment. This episode of Insurance for the New Possible wants to ask, how can emerging technologies drive growth and operational efficiencies in emerging markets? Can Vietnam's first insurance KOL platform redefine how consumers learn about and purchase insurance? What innovative strategies are needed to create a truly consumer-centric insurance landscape? Thank you both so much for coming and doing this show today. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to be here, Michael.
It's awesome to have both of you. Okay, let's just jump right into this. The insurance industry seems to have entered a phase of dynamic evolution, with emerging technologies, digital ecosystems, and new distribution models all converging. How do we see this new phase developing for insurance in Southeast Asia or in Asia in general over the next 3, 4, 5 years? Let's start with you, Ron.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a big question.
It is. There's a lot going on, right?
But also, I think it also reflects the way that consumer behavior have been changing. And I guess where we come from is also from a context where, from our parent group, over the last 18, 19 years, we have been evolving from a very simple kind of proposition, which is a website, like an aggregator model, into now more of an ecosystem approach. And it's all because of the fact that our customers are evolving, the insurers are evolving, and technologies are all coming together. I think it's for us. I think it's quite natural that we have to be adapting to this changing behavior among the whole stakeholders in the whole system. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you think it's going?
That's so interesting. If you're looking at a horizon of the next 5 years, then it's worthwhile looking at how it's evolved in the past. And in the past, maybe a decade or so, it's been it's trying to trail evolving customer preferences, and that's probably what Huize is also trying to tap onto. But I think now it's shifting towards how do you get one step ahead, because technology is evolving so much faster than we can really keep up. So that will sort of define what the next 5 years is going to look like, where you don't have a formula, you don't have a framework, you just have to keep evolving.
You said, so this is really interesting, right? You said it was just a website, it was a simple place to do some aggregation. But you also mentioned this idea that the customers have been changing as well. And you're right, if you were 5 years old when you first started your business, now you're 23 years old. So that's a completely new customer cohort. And I'll come to you on this as well, but how have customers changed, do you think? What has changed them, and what has changed the way that they interact with technology, and then therefore insurance and maybe even other financial services?
Right. To us, actually, we are serving two sides of the customers, right? One side is the insurers, actually, right, where we need to help them to connect to the consumers. On the other hand, the consumers need us to connect to the right products. So actually, we have two sets of customers to take care of. So on the insurance buyer's perspective, I think what's been changing, I'm talking from the perspective of having a China experience that we have in the group level, and where we are taking the right formula into replicating that so-called success into Southeast Asia. So what we've seen is that the customer journey has totally evolved into a model where people are more of a proactively searching for their own information, and they do so via the mobile apps. They do so via social media, and they want to form their own opinion first before they want someone to validate their view. I think that's how the crux of it is. We need to touch them where they want to be touched, rather than we want to hard sell them. We want to force them to commit to something which maybe had been the old model in the decades ago. But then this current day, especially with the Gen Z, they don't want to be bothered, right?
Right.
I want to be on my own terms, right?
Yeah.
I want to seek out to you when I want you. But then beforehand, they would do a lot of research on the internet. And obviously, with AI and everything nowadays, they can be a very much of an expert on an insurance product before they even reach an agent to close out the conversion. So I think I'll just stop there. I think that's how we think that the changing behavior has been impacting the business as a whole.
That's so interesting.
Go ahead.
That's so interesting, Ron, when you say they don't want to be bothered, but they want to be answered when they have a question. And it's about accessibility. And as you said previously, information was so curated, and now it's so accessible. There are so many sources, but finding that right source is really key.
So this is what I was going to ask you, right? And you've kind of alluded to this, but when I was growing up and trying to learn new things, I felt like there was more of an objective truth. And if I found it, I found the same truth that you found, and I found the same truth that you find, right? But now I feel like my daughter's objective truth and her best friend's objective truth, even if it comes to something like insurance, could be completely different because the sources of information that they're using are so disaggregated. Does that make sense? So this is what I want to ask you, because you said before, you want to kind of be ahead of the customers. But how do you balance this idea of, I want to make sure my customers are getting what they want when they need it, with the tech is advancing so fast that sometimes I'm ahead of them even? How do you balance that? Do you know what I mean?
That's a really interesting thought experiment, I would say, where you're looking into the future, but you're delivering in the present.
Right.
And that to really hone into that, you'd have to look at what are the core first principles here. Ultimately, it's trust. I want whatever mechanism, whatever technology or person you put in front of me as a customer, I need to be able to trust that that has my best interests. And transparency is it, can this mechanism answer all my questions effectively? And with those have never changed, regardless of what technology has been presented. Transparency, accessibility, trust have never changed. So it's really about weaving a human interaction and enabled by technology and delivered to the customer in the way that they want it.
Huize has actually been recognized. We talked about this, right, when we were prepping, for its really successful deployment of emerging technologies. How do you then take what you've learned there in China, right? And then sort of filter it out to the rest of Southeast Asia through Pony and some of the other things that you're doing?
Well, thanks for having this question. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with Chubb together in Vietnam right now. I think that one of the most successful formula that we had in China, which we cracked, was back in 2018-19 when we launched the KOL kind of partnership model. And what that does is really to be able to effectively and efficiently reach out to millions of potential customers in the right demographics through the curated KOL partnerships that we have selected in the China market. And these KOLs may not be your typical kind of influencers that you imagine. For example, there are actuaries, there are doctors, there are accountants, there are tax lawyers and whatnot. But a lot of these people right now, right? They're slashers. What I mean by slashers is they have different jobs. So they have a full-time job, right? And they have something on the side. So the full-time job might be a 9-to-5 job in a bank or whatever. But then outside the working hours, they wanted to utilize their kind of domain knowledge and to be able to drive traffic into insurance sales. And that gives them a secondary kind of income stream. And I think that the model is also appealing to the new way of the new gig economy, so-called. People want to have, different things at the same time. And the KOL thing that we are launching in Vietnam, which has been a replica of a China model, is leveraging on the trust that the KOLs have built, which is exactly what Shruti just mentioned.
Exactly.
Trust is the most hard thing to solve in the whole insurance journey. Once you have that solved, then the product just comes naturally. Just understanding the customer's requirements, what's the risk points, how do we solve that problem for you, and then that's a policy sale. So I think that model inherently is very playing to the new mindset of the Gen Zs, and then the trust issue being resolved, and then obviously everything comes together. Yeah.
So my grandfather said to me a long time ago, it takes a lifetime to build trust and a moment to lose it. It's really important to think about this. I want to ask both of you this. I want to start with you, right? And I think we may have been joking about this earlier, but I always say, I want to be in the meeting when that thing gets decided, right? It must have been kind of, what's the right word, unconventional in 2018 in China to say, I get the KOL thing, and you're right. It's not about dancing on TikTok. It's about some man or woman who's an actuary who has a lot of influence. because it's related to the insurance industry. It's not someone who just dances and sings, right? But it must have felt really unconventional to sit in that meeting and say, for a big company in China, a big global company, and just go, we're going to do something completely different. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is that conversation like?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think of a KOL, the appeal, as Ron mentioned earlier, the appeal, it could be two things. One is credibility. He said doctors and lawyers and
Yeah.
people that I inherently associate with transparency and trust, and they are authorized. They've spent decades probably studying the information, and relatability. So even if there isn't someone who's a lawyer or doctor, but I can see someone reflected back to me. Someone like me is buying this product. Someone like me purchased a critical illness policy. Then that would immediately resonate with me. So if you could either, I mean, KOL is not a catch-all, like you said. It could be a dancer on TikTok. It could be a lawyer providing providing advisory functions, but ultimately it has to meet these two criteria. Either they have to be reflected back to the customer, or they have to be sort of this very credible source.
Right. And this gets back to this idea of this disaggregation of information distribution, right? Because you're saying you're trying to find someone who's like you are. I'm also trying to find someone who's like I am, and we're different, right? But it doesn't mean that objective truth is not the same at some level. We're just trying to find a different source for it. What was it like in China in 2018 trying to convince, because you have to do two things again. You now have two cohorts, right?
Right.
You have to convince internally that we can lean on doctors and lawyers and actuaries and whomever to actually go out and create this sort of trusted and transparent information source. But then you have to convince the doctors and the actuaries to do it as well. How does that work?
Yeah, I think that the 0 to 1 is always the most challenging, which is exactly
sure.
what we are trying to do now in Vietnam.
Yeah. Talk to me about the Vietnamese experience.
It's a 0 to 1 right now.
Yeah.
So I think what we want to replicate is, at least from the experience in China, is that, initially it might not be the doctors or actuaries actually, because the professional people, they might resent this, idea of me being an influencer and,
Right.
I'm putting my face on the map. And
Right. It's like I studied all these years to become a
Right.
neurosurgeon.
Exactly.
Why am
There's a
I
lot of,
doing this thing?
Exactly.
Which
But
is true today. Sorry, go ahead.
It takes time. It takes a year or two. But once the ecosystem is blossoming, right? When people see success case studies of certain people and say, hey, you know what? This guy is like the same grade as me, same kind of experience, but he's not adding another, 100K per month of passive income, because what he's doing is just videos talking about things that he knows about. And then there's a lot of traffic, and this platform, which is Pony or Huize in China, is working together with him on converting these leads into actual insurance sales, and actually is doing people a good, because people who actually watch the videos understand what they're getting into, right? They're being educated, being alerted to the awareness of why they need this protection. So I think that's how it really worked. But it takes time to incubate this kind of mentality and mindset in the community.
What kind of support do they get from the big companies, though, that are working with them to do this? Do you know what I mean? Or are they just like completely doing it on their own? Because there must be some vetting.
Absolutely.
In a sense, right? Because you have your own reputation, you have your own reputation as well, and they have to live up to that at least.
Well, that's really our job to
That's
deliver.
what I mean.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to make sure that reputation is being maintained? And like, what kind of guidance do they get? What kind of interaction do they have with you? What do they owe you? Do you know what I mean?
Right. So I think that's where the insurtechs come into play to help the providers in terms of training the community of influencers. So we provide training on product, right? Obviously, if they're selling us critical illness product, they need to be understand what underwriting criteria, what are the key features of the product, and so forth. So content-wise, we provide some template for them. So this is like the key points that you need to deliver, right? And then you go and improvise on your own. You can do your own live streaming session. You can do your video. You can do your podcast even. There are podcasts in China that's doing insurance.
I'm sure.
It's called 小宇宙.
Yeah.
They're doing sales in podcasts. So that's how lead generation is being done in China. And I think a lot of this can be, I won't say replicated, but we can take reference from and try to deploy that in Southeast Asia.
Do you feel like this is one of the cases where, even if it's not technology related, but where like the industry is a little bit further ahead maybe than the consumers? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or than the KOLs themselves? Sorry, go ahead.
For sure. As Ron was alluding to, the ROI from a single video is a lot higher than someone going after a side hustle to become an insurance agent. That was definitely something that people did just 5 years ago, but they can now create one video which can hit, maybe 1 million impressions even. And the ROI on that is so much higher. So to answer your question around convincing sort of internal stakeholders, as well as this is a whole synergistic ecosystem of regulators, of insurance providers, insurtechs. It's the whole synergistic ecosystem here where all of these stakeholders are all centered around customer protection. Right. Ultimately, the customer has to be, provided with meaningful, impactful information that's accurate, that allows them to make a decision. And you're essentially using the different stakeholders here, enabling them to help the customer ultimately make that decision. And KOLs, as Ron mentioned, yes, they provide product details, etc. But what you're doing is that you are convincing them to help the consumer make the decision at a faster rate, at a rate that they understand all of the things that they need to be sure of to make that decision and be comfortable with it.
Why did we think Vietnam was a great place to start this or to do this outside of China?
Right, that's a very good question. So when we start to embark on the so-called internationalization strategy starting from 2023, we were assessing the Southeast Asian landscape, different markets, and obviously most people would look at the 100 million plus population places.
Right, like Indonesia or something like that.
So in Southeast Asia, that means the VIP countries: Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines.
Yep.
VIP. So those three markets.
It's burned in my brain now.
Yes, I heard it. I heard this from someone, and it just stuck into my mind.
Right into my head.
Yeah,
I got it. Go
so
ahead.
VIP. So VIP, we assess all these three markets, and which is the best one that we want to go first. And ultimately, we settled on Vietnam, and I think predominantly because I think it's the proximity of the country with China, which is our home market, our group level. Because Pony thrives on a lot of the things that the group has developed over the past few years, in terms of AI, in terms of tech. We are bringing a lot of this, available tech stack into Southeast Asia. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, right? And the playbook, the strategy, everything. I think Vietnam is very similar to what we've seen in China maybe 10 years ago. Maybe not even 10 years ago. I think Vietnam is probably like now 2016, 2017.
Okay.
So
in terms 10 years
in terms of insurtech development. The country is very interesting. So obviously, insurance is still very so-called nascent in terms of penetration and density. It's still pretty low. But then what you see is the technological application. Like you guys are working with like big platforms like Momo and all these other e-commerce platforms. Their consumer-facing apps is very vibrant, and there's a lot of capital is chasing the country.
It's kind of amazing, actually.
The adoption, the application layer is very mature. So there's a very interesting mismatch between the insurance maturity and the technological kind of application already. So I think that's why we see there's a huge potential. And obviously, demographics is very important here.
Yeah, it's a very young country.
100 million people.
70% is below the age of 35. And in 5 years' time, 21 million first-time buyers will enter the market.
Exactly. And right now, they're just breaking the $5,000 GPT per capita mark, which is what we see in the OECD countries where health protection is going to take off in the next 10 years. So I think that's a sweet spot for us to get into. Yeah.
Right. So this is something we haven't spoken about in a long time on this show, but this idea that there is sort of a line of, when you cross that GDP line of around $5,000, right, per year, that people start worrying about, like, not how am I going to eat, but how am I going to protect the things that I have, and how can I save and accumulate assets, not things, but assets, and then how do I invest, right? So once they hit that spot, it kind of goes like this. Yeah. I wanted to ask as well about because you mentioned AI and other emerging technologies. We're going to switch gears just a little bit to talk about where do you think, from an operational standpoint, some of the most significant changes can be made using new emerging technologies, right? Particularly for insurers, and how do you plan to address like these operational issues? Because that's your side of the business, and I presume that there's somewhere also to help the KOLs. There's got to be some relationship there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, from a distribution standpoint, optimizing that from a KOL perspective would be, I mean, we're definitely benefiting from advanced technology in these distribution platforms. Like KOLs just have access to so many tools, and companies like Huize are at the forefront of this. So it's very assuring for insurers. But from an operational standpoint, we just want to make sure that the tools are malleable. They have to change based on evolving consumer preferences. Simple things like in the way the product details and illustrations are delivered to customers have to be responsive to the tools that they're using, the technology, the platforms that they're using. So really working on those, it's just a delivery mechanism. And of course, claims and really leveraging data to make sure that we're responsive, that we're transparent, that we provide decisions quicker. That would be the real key. And of course, product evolution. Looking at the Darwin series that Huize pioneered, really, it's gone through so many iterations. It ships like a software product,
Right.
you know.
But it does though. And I was thinking about that too. Sorry, go ahead. It's
Yeah.
exciting in a way, right?
Yeah, we've never seen that with
No.
insurance products evolving so rapidly. It's like, it goes through an agile sprint cycle even probably. We ship different versions based on consumer needs. But that also means that consumer needs are evolving that rapidly. Diagnostics and out-of-pocket expenses, the gap is broadening quite a bit. And
Yep.
the healthcare industry, even in Vietnam, is sort of evolving to accommodate those evolving demographics, the whole inflection point in how insurance products are delivered to customers.
So one of the things that I saw when I was working at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, and they'll hate me for saying this, right, is that these really international companies would do most of their software development for the United States market or maybe for the London market, right? And then they would say, here's what you have to work with.
Right. Yeah.
And the localization was so hard because just the market microstructures were so different that to just reprogram it, just to turn yen calculations or local market calculations from NASDAQ calculations was just really hard to do. They never looked at it as like a greenfield opportunity to rewrite and then the stuff that they learned then send back home. But it sounds like what you're doing with Pony and the way you're interacting is saying, we learned all this stuff at Huize, but now we have this greenfield opportunity to create Pony, take the things that we learned, but maybe make it better, and then filter that back.
Correct.
Is that, do I have this right?
Exactly. You hit it on the nail. So it's exactly what you just mentioned. I love the point that you made just now on the different product iterations.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reflection of the maturity of the market in China, where it's gone through 10 years of insurtech development. Now for critical illness, you have segmentation for adult, young adult, rich adults, poor adults,
Right.
young children, babies,
All adults.
because they have different risk profiles and different actuary models. So when you limit your underwriting to people within this age group, obviously the pricing can be much more precise. I think that's also a function of the operational challenge that we're trying to resolve here with data, with accumulation of data. And I think that's very important. When we have 10 years of data that's collected on the platform from the operations, we can really use that to help providers on customizing good products together. So in Vietnam right now, obviously we're just starting, so it takes time to build that data set.
Sure.
What you have proprietary in-house is most valuable because that's how you win, right? Rather than just taking market data, external data. But that's also a triangulation of everything together, and then we can create the right products and the most value for money propositions for the demographic.
And if you solve the problem of trust or that problem statement, then customers may be more willing to share data to allow for this personalization. Do you think so, Ron? Or?
Yes, definitely. I think in China, I think we have the luxury of the Chinese consumers being very used to sharing data, if you know what I mean. So they're not too sensitive to that. But in other parts of the world, I think we need to be a little bit more, careful. I think Vietnam right now, again, back to that point we made on the young people being very receptive of mobile apps and using e-commerce. I think another point that we want to make is we want to be a very much of an open platform model. So KOLs is one lead generation, source. And I think Chubb is also doing very good at partnering with e-commerce platforms like the big super apps, and that's obviously a huge opportunity for them to unlock. So for us, we also want to aggregate this e-commerce merchants on the provider's behalf, and that's what we've been doing in China, that's what we've been doing in Vietnam, and that's what we want to do in Southeast Asia.
What is it like from a partnership perspective? This just pops into my head. Yeah, This must excite you in a way to be able to work with a partner who's constantly iterating.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Constantly iterating, because it has to change at some level the way you think as well. because you're like, oh, I didn't think about that thing, whatever it was. Do you know what I mean? And then you can filter that out in other places, but that has to be true. No?
Having partners like this is a catalyst for our own innovation in many respects.
Exactly.
And that sort of catalytic drive is sort of encompassing the whole ecosystem. Like every aspect of the business will transform on every side, and even regulators are sort of coming up to that. They're in Vietnam specifically, the Ministry of Finance, a lot of regulators are digitalizing IDs and social health insurance. 94% are on the social health insurance platform already in Vietnam, which is amazing and incredible feat for the country.
Yeah. I've found the technology development in Vietnam to be kind of amazing. We've spoken to tons of companies there, and you're right. They're constantly iterating as well. And because, as you said, 21 million people will become first-time buyers, they're probably a younger cohort, but they're all digitally native, which means that everything else they do falls into the same category of the stuff that you're distributing to them as well, with just a different end game, right? So whether it's e-commerce or entertainment or whatever, they're getting it from the same place, and they kind of want that experience to be the same, yeah?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. Do you find when you go into a new country like Vietnam that you do have to do this like hyper localization to the products, and that you learn so much there about what, again, the market microstructure that I was talking about before, where the products you have to create do take time?
Yes,
Yeah,
it does.
Is that true as well?
I think the Vietnam experience so far has been honestly quite a lot more better than we expected. I think obviously because we have a strong partner here,
For sure.
right? That really helps smooth out the whole process. And I think again, I think we do benefit from some kind of hindsight with what we've done in China. So a lot of things that we've done, I think we kind of know what are the pitfalls that we might gonna face, and just to tweak it to the local market. I think local market, I think at the end of the day, it's all regulator. We need to deal with the regulator. We need to make sure that the regulator is on board, right? And I think that's really our partner's strength here as well. Yeah.
You mentioned this product iteration. I just want to go back to it one more time, because I want to understand the relationship between this product is constantly changing and making sure that, like, what is the impact is on trust, right? Because if it's constantly changing, then the thing that I expected to get when I came back yesterday is not the thing that I'm getting today, even if the thing today is better. But you know what I mean? How do you balance those two things?
Communication is central to that. Really explaining it in a way that's accessible to customers. Why has this product changed? It's definitely a lot more complex than a new iPhone or the Apple Watch, which we were talking about earlier.
Right?
You just need
I
to
want mine back.
Exactly. And you'd have to look at the changing demographics, as Ron alluded to. What are the sort of diseases that these young customers think that would indicate financial distress? Yeah, exactly. And millennials and Gen Z will become influencers for their parents. So if they're buying these products, then that's an extension to say, oh, I want to buy this product for my parents, for my relatives and family members as well. And therefore, we have to, when you think about product, you're not only thinking about this target demographic, but you're also thinking 5-6 tiers down the line in terms of who they will influence. And you have to be ready for that. But that's where that's where KOLs could really help as well, where in terms of, really moving ahead with that communication, making sure that customers understand why, what is new about this version.
I'm sometimes surprised by how surprised my daughter is at how digitally native I am.
Oh, no way.
All completely off topic. But I think about her when we have these conversations, because she's the youngest person I know, right? And I use her as kind of an avatar for what that generation is doing. But sometimes she's surprised by how much I already know. One thing we haven't spoken about right now is, particularly when you enter a new market like Vietnam, is this idea of literacy. Where does this fit in, and where do you all fit in making sure that their insurance literacy is up to snuff, so that when they do decide or need to make a decision to buy something, that they have enough information and they actually understand? Like, how important is that?
It's so key to the whole process, but it's not reliant on one party really driving the financial literacy. If insurers were the sole party doing it, then it would limit the trust that customers have. So it's a combination all the ecosystem partners that need to do it, including, distribution partners, insurers, regulators, influencers as well, for
Yep.
sure.
So exactly. So I think 2 points I can add there. One is I think content is very important. The right kind of content. So not just the influencers that we work with, but also our own platform generated content. In terms of publishing the right educational content on the website, on our social media channels, so that people can get exposed to and to wake up their awareness, or to educate them on what kind of protection they require. And actually, the second point about Vietnam, which is quite interesting, is you didn't realize that they had the highest PISA score.
What is that score?
It's a PISA score.
Ah, got it.
I know it's a PISA or PISA.
Yeah.
But that's an assessment on science, math, and language.
Right. It's super high.
Vietnam actually came top in Southeast Asia.
We could spend hours talking about
excluding Singapore and Malaysia.
Yeah,
okay?
we could spend hours talking about what the government has done there to influence the technology and science education.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Sorry.
But that's also why we chose Vietnam.
Yeah,
because I think that the amount of money that they spend on education as a proportion of the family income is actually quite high.
Yeah, it's really kind of great. Yeah.
The whole population is so driven. There's so much energy there, which I think Ron might, definitely experience given how often he visits.
Are you going throughout the whole country?
I just spend my time in Ho Chi Minh.
In Ho Chi Minh mostly?
But we have now teams in Hanoi as well.
Yeah. My first time, you guys will laugh at this. My first time in Vietnam was 1991.
Okay. Wow.
And my second time in Vietnam was 2022.
Wow. Okay.
Wow, that's quite a contrast.
It was like going to two completely different places. But the thing that I did know before I went the second time was this idea of the technological development that and the idea that the government was doing that. Because a lot of my Japanese friends had been building kind of outsourcing and technology development centers in Vietnam.
Yep.
And their answer to me was always, the talent there is so strong, right? And again, it's so close, so it's easy to do. Plus, it's close to China, so like all of these things came into play. It was really important. What does success look like to you 2 years out, 3 years out? I always talk about this within my own business, right? I know where I want to go. I'm not 100% sure normally how I'm going to get there, but I know what that pathway is, right? So I'm just trying to tease out like what you think that is.
So for me, success is, so take Vietnam as an example, to deliver a win-win-win partnership among the key stakeholders in the ecosystem, meaning the providers, the consumers, and our collaborators, right? So we all make money, but then we also deliver the right product to the consumers. And we create this new market, this new incremental market that's digitally friendly, that has not been seen in the market, that it's providing an additional source of income for people involved, and for the insurers to enjoy a new market opportunity. I think that will be my success definition.
Making it a verb to buy insurance in this real distribution
That's
channel.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. Making it a verb.
Like, no one should really know how this even evolved, but it becomes so natural and subconscious to do this. That would be a representation of success across Southeast Asia.
So that's the I guess that's the last question, right? Is where does embedded insurance fit into it? It's almost like an inevitability, no?
Well, I guess the fundamental nature of embedded insurance, it's that it's tied to your daily activities, that, you're taking a ride or ordering food or something like that, and then the insurance product associated with that risk is presented to you. However, with the more complex products, they can't always be tied to microtransactions.
Right.
It's a totally different concept, right, Ron?
Totally agree. So I think in the case of a travel insurance or a auto insurance, I think that the embedded journey is very apparent, right? The risk point is there. The customer, it's almost like a mandatory requirement to procure something for those 2 days of travel, or for those 3 days of
it's very obvious,
renting a car.
Yeah.
But for a critical illness, for a medical product, I think it's a very much a different proposition, which I still believe insurance needs to be sold. So to be sold, you need the right channels, the right content, the right way to touch consumers. So I think at the end of the day, I think life and health is still very much different than a PNC product.
Definitely.
In that sense. Yeah.
It's not like if I go to the hospital for maybe the flu or to top up my medication, and if I get recommended a critical illness, that just amplifies the fear that I have of the hospitals.
I'm already nervous
Please
about this.
no.
Right.
Please don't do that to me. Okay. Yeah. One more thing. I just want to do something a little bit whimsical. What's the craziest idea you believe is still worth pursuing in insurance distribution and innovation? You want to start? Like something where you're like, we really have to do this, but it seems a little bit crazy to everybody around me. It's going to take some convincing, but I think this is something we should do.
Are insurers definitely the ones producing crazy ideas, though?
I mean, maybe not, right?
Maybe, yeah.
But again, it's the same thing I always talk about. It's like you want to be in that meeting where someone says, should we use a KOL to do this? Which must have seemed crazy back in 2018, but now it's just getting implemented and rolled out, right? And you're involved as well. So something like that where it may have seemed a little bit crazy.
I think the holy grail for a distributor like ourselves is a totally AI driven agent that can acquire, convert, and support the customer service throughout the whole life cycle. So that will be the holy grail. And for the industry as a whole, right? The AI can be able to find the right people on the internet, on social media, understand the behavior, recommend the right product to them, right? Close out the sale, and then process claims for them. So it's like a closed loop.
That's a little crazy.
AI thing.
I'll give
yeah.
you that.
But I think that will be the holy grail.
That's a little crazy.
Or really accelerating the depth or the speed at which human interaction is delivered at the right point to optimize rather than hinder them. That orchestration would be so revolutionary to the whole industry. But you're not cutting the human part out of the process, which embedded insurance definitely does. But you're delivering the right level of human interaction where it's absolutely needed, and it's the most impactful.
Perfect. Ron Tam, Co-Chief Financial Officer and Head of International at Huize, and the CEO of Pony InsurTech. Shruti Sharma, Global Partnership Manager at Chubb. Thank you both so much for doing this today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.